years old. So these are ancient traditions, and they bring peace, they bring connection. But then they also know that when they die, someone will still have communication with them. Now, when you say about the mummy, I have not seen that in homes. I've certainly been to mummy museums in Mexico, in Guanajuato, Mexico. There's an incredible one. You just go through, and all the mummies are there wearing the clothes, because there was something in the acidity of the ground that preserved them. So you see people exactly the way they were buried. But I have been chased by a spirit of the dead on a mountaintop in Brazil. I've had hair-raising things happen. And when someone says to me about, oh, you believe that, it's not a belief. I'm a journalist. I've experienced it. This is the way it is. And I don't know. It's just, there's our culture. It's just another thing culturally that's not right. It's this finality of everything. I went to, in Santa Fe, New Mexico, where I live, there was a man who was very, very important in the church. And he suffered a lot. I had interviewed him. He suffered a lot in his last years. And when he died, I had a lot of respect for him. And I went to the funeral, and I stayed back because, I wasn't family. I wasn't a congregation member or anything. But I just wanted to honor the man. And I was shocked out of my mind that when it came time, he was a priest, and when it came time to lower the body, there had been a grave dug, 6 feet, whatever. And when it came time to lower the body into the ground, the priest said, you can all leave now, you shouldn't be disturbed by watching this. And everybody left except for a couple of family members and me. And that was one of the things that made me write this book. Are you kidding me? You can't even stay with someone until they're lowered into the ground? Is death something that's just, has to be avoided? Death is something that it's not an end. It's not an end.
But but how about where the people are cremated? I mean, I feel like, because one of my relatives was cremated, and I felt cheated because, there was nothing left to,
But this is the thing. If a person is buried, let's say they're not cremated, and they're buried, there's nothing left either. They're just bones left. But it's the Dalai Lama, who's so smart and lighthearted, and he said, death is just changing clothes. So the person is still there, but in an energetic form. They're not physically, their body is not physically there, but they're present in an energetic form. And so, people who want to be cremated, it's arguable that it doesn't matter the way your human remains are disposed of. What matters is that there's a continuity of spirit, and you can contact this if you know how, and you can keep up the relationship. So, yes, some people feel cheated when someone's cremated, but it's a person's individual decision. Green burials are very big now. I think it's an individual thing, how you want to be, what you want happen to you when you die. But the point is that you die, but you don't disappear. And so that's why I wrote this. I hope I've answered the question, but there's a funny part to it too. After I was going to my father's gravesite all the time, when I was going out with a guy and he wanted to get serious, or sometimes they wanted to get married or engaged, whatever, I would say to them, are you willing to meet my father? And they would say yes. And I'd say, okay. And we'd get in the car, and they thought they were going to visit my father in the house. And I would take them to the cemetery. And I'd say to the guy, could you just do me a favor, just walk around a little here? And I would ask my father, what do you think of this one? And I would hear a voice saying, oh, this is a bad match for you. This one's lazy. This one's that. This and that. And that was real too. And I wrote a play about it. And I thought, oh, I'll never tell anybody this is what I really do. That play's been performed around the world. So there are a lot of people interested in this. And it's not heavy. It's light. Like thinking that you die and then there's nothing left is heavy. But knowing how to communicate, it's, I don't know, to me it opens up worlds.
Hey, now, James, are you still there? Because James is a medium, and I'm sure he has some questions to ask you about this.
I got one. Judy, you mentioned you were chased by a spirit on a mountaintop or something there.
Yes.
I'm curious. I'm curious. Why was that spirit chasing you? Was it territorial or something like that? And also, have you ever had some spirits follow you home that maybe you didn't want to come home with you?
No, I really never have. And this was in Brazil, and it's on the Day of Os Finados. It's the equivalent of Day of the Dead, right? It's November 1st or November 2nd, and I heard that there was this ceremony. And I just knew I had to get there. Well, I write about it. It's very complicated how I got to go there. Okay, I finally go there. And they were all people. It was a tradition from Nigeria that the slaves brought over when they came to the Americas. And there was a man with a whip. And I was told, and no one treated me and my husband specially, which I liked, because it wasn't touristy. We were the only people there who were not descendants of Nigerians. I felt very privileged to be there. It was in a very remote area. We had to climb up a hill to get there. And we were told that this guy with the whip, he was cracking his whip. And they said his job is to separate the dead from the living. And that's all we were told. And we got into this, they led us into this huge hall, and no one paid attention to us, which I loved because it was just real. And they said, once you come in, you cannot go out. You can't leave all night. And they separate the men from the women, so my husband was like far, it was the size of a football stadium. So he's on one side, and I'm on the other side. And in the middle of the night, I needed to go to the bathroom. And I walked over to the bathroom, and it's the first time in my life that I just couldn't do it. There were 1,000 people, and there was one hole in the ground. It was just terrible, and I just couldn't do it. And as much as I wanted to experience what was going on, because it was the ancestral spirits coming back, I just, nature called. So I somehow signaled to my husband, and he met me, and I said to them at the door, please, can I go out? And they said, if you go out, you can't come back. And I really had no choice. And so we walked out, and it was pitch black, and my husband came out with me. And all of a sudden, this thing flew by. I would say it looked like a blanket or something. It was just very colorful. And it was by, and it was very dark at night, very, very dark. There was no moon. And I thought, that's someone in costume. And then it whisked by me, and it turned to the side, and it had no depth. It was just maybe an inch wide. And I'm describing it like a blanket. It had kind of a square shape. And it was flitting by very, 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 very quickly. Like a person could not have done that. But I kept saying, it's a person. But once I saw that there was no thickness, I let out a scream. And I was frightened. It was dark. There was nobody there. And my husband was there, and his eyes were popping out. And all of a sudden, and I just screamed, and this man appeared, and he brought his whip out, and he whipped it away, and it disappeared. And I was chased by a spirit of the dead, and it didn't hurt me. I screamed, and that's it. And my belief is that when you open the door to communicating with the dead, you are in total control of when you want to close it, when you want to open it, when you want to end it, when you want to start it. Nobody's controlling you, and I have never had a bad experience. And people contact me, and they say, well, once you open this up, can't bad spirits come in? I really believe that a lot of it is in your mind. It's your own fear. But I have never had anything other than an interesting or instructional or informative or very moving exchange. And I have never had a bad experience except this when I was chased. But 5 minutes afterward, I was fascinated. I was no longer scared. I was, what was that? And I remember coming back to the United States, and there are some people who live in Santa Fe who are Nigerian drummers from Nigeria, and it's generations and generations of drummers. And I invited them to the house, and I told them all about what had happened. And they said it was the Egungun, the Egun of the ancestors. You said you went to an Egun ceremony, and we don't know that they've done that in Nigeria for hundreds of years or so. You got such an unusual, fabulous experience, and that's how I feel about it.
Oh, wow. So obviously that's why they wanted you guys to probably stay in the building for 24 hours so that wouldn't happen, I would reckon. And that's fascinating. The guy with the whip is separating you guys.
It separates the living from the dead. The ancestral spirits come back one day a year. It's called Dia os Finados in Portuguese, which they speak in Brazil. It's like the Mexican Day of the Dead. You know, that film Coco introduced the United States, people in the United States, that Disney film Coco. No, it was Pixar, I think. They introduced people to that. But it's very, very profound. And I was scared because I was totally unprepared. I just was, but, you know, I don't know, it would take a lot more than that to scare me. I just want people to experience this. I want them to come with me. Come on, I'm going to take you into this thing and tell you about it. And then I want, if they wish, if they're just curious or if they don't want to do it, that's fine with me. But if you want to, here's how you do it. And that's it.
Well, how big a read is this book of yours, Judie?
Hold on, let me see. I have it in front of me. I just got my copies recently. It's 182 pages. So
it'd be a good weekend read. Now, because our time is running up, why don't you tell people where they can find you, your website, and again, the name of the book, and maybe a couple other books you want to, mention.
Well, thank you. Okay, so the name of this book, and you can get it, Amazon is the easiest way to get it. I'm giving a lot of talks, a lot of books are sold there, but the easiest way to get it as an electronic book, as an ebook, or as a paperback. And I made it very, very affordable, so no one has a money issue. The paperback is $14.99, and it took me 20 years to put it together. The paperback is $14.99 and $9.99 for the ebook, and it's called How to Communicate with the Dead, and the subtitle is And How Cultures Do It Around the World. And my name is Judie Fein, F like Frank, E-I-N. And my website, which has links to a lot of things, and also my other books, the website is globaladventure.us, like United States. So it's globaladventure.us, globaladventure.us. And I have two other books. One is called Life is a Trip, The Transformative Magic of Travel. And in the book, I take readers with me there are 14 different chapters, to 14 different places where I learned something from a different culture that changed my life or changed my way of looking at life. That book sells very well. And then I wrote another book called The Spoon from Minkowitz, Minkowitz, and it's about why it's important to try to go once in a lifetime to the place where your ancestors came from, because it's all still there, even if on the surface you don't think it is. And many immigrants came to the United States, and they were fleeing horrible situations in Europe or Russia and in different places, and they didn't tell their children about it. And so now in the United States, you have a situation where people they barely know where their grandparents came from. They certainly don't know where their ancestors before that came from. And it's a book about why that's important. And I take people, again, on an adventure with me. In my case, they came from Eastern Europe. Today it's Ukraine. And how do you find what's left there? And what is it like? Doesn't matter where it is that they came from, but you walk the earth that they walked on, you breathe the air, you eat the food. We all come from we're standing on somebody's shoulders, and we have to acknowledge them.
Yeah, Judie, our time is up there. Everybody can find her book. The new one is called How to Communicate with the Dead. You want to look under Judie Fein on Amazon. Hey, I told you the 90 minutes would go by fast. It did.
You're very easy. And James, are you still there too?
Yes, and it's been a pleasure talking to you.
You seem like a really nice, scented guy. Thank you for being part of this.
Thank you.
Okay, Judie, you have a good one, and thank you so much for coming on Night Dreams Talk Radio.
And feel well. Gary, feel well. I'm so sorry to hear about what happened to you. Feel well.
I am.
Okay.
Good night.
Big hugs to everybody out there. Bye.
Okay, take care. Well, we'll be back here in about 2.5 minutes. We're going to have Sam back on. We're going to have James back on. We're going to talk about this bull in Oregon Again, I want to talk a little bit more about that, and we're going to talk paranormal stuff for like the last 28 minutes. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio after